At the Shine ready to talk about women and collaboration and being all the things that help each other shine today. Reanette, where'd you see some shininess this week?
Where did I see some shininess this week? I always look for it on Facebook. I always, or even all social media of other women lifting up other women and, you know, um, encouraging them to be successful. Yeah, I always look for it there, but I can't think of a specific situation this week. Did you? How about you?
I helped my daughter move this week.
Oh,
My daughter is 22 right still till September. She's graduating from college, and so we went over to help her move from the apartment she's been in this year near campus to her grown-up apartment to the
yeah,
estates in North Seattle, and yeah, just had a lot of fun encouraging her and empowering her, and a couple of her roommates, and so
yeah.
they're great girls. They're really good at helping each other
Well, that's
to
cool.
shine and elevate each other. So
Yeah. Well, congratulations to her. That's exciting.
it
Exciting
is,
times.
it is. Oh my gosh! But this empty nester thing is so real.
Is it?
It's
Oh,
so real. Oh, she's my baby. So yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And we'll spend the next weekend. Going to her graduation and doing all that kind of stuff. But
Hmm.
it was interesting as we've been talking about the shine effect and how important it is for us to empower each other and empower other women to shine because um, really there's an abundance, there's enough to go around for
Hmm.
everybody, even though there's
Yeah.
some scarcity. This is researching this stuff has really been helpful to me because I've always been the girl who really wanted to encourage everybody and is everybody's cheerleader, which is probably why
Mhm.
I went into coaching. And yet for most of my life, I've had a hard time with a lot of women, and I just couldn't figure it out. I didn't understand why they didn't like me, why I wasn't fitting in, why are mean girls mean, right? And
Yeah.
so doing some of this research and seeing that's actually societal, right? I mean, I hear you think the US is all, women are on top and especially so much more so than in many other countries. But women are really good at holding each other down. And
Yeah.
one of the things that I read and I heard on a TED talk was that as little girls, we want everything to be fair. We want, if we're having a tea party or we're playing with our dolls, we want everyone to have the same amount of candies, the same amount
Yeah.
same amount of tea in our teacups. We want to have the same amount of toys. We want everything to be fair, and we don't want anybody to be left out or whatever. So as little girls, it's really nice. But then 20 years later, we get in the workplace, and all of a sudden we're like, well, no, you can't elevate to this, or oh no, how come you get to be this person? How come you got selected? That's not fair. You're supposed to be down here with me. If I
Mhm.
can be up there with you. And
Yeah.
I'm an idea person, so I would like think that I was sharing all these great ideas to improve something that was going on in a ministry that I was in or the workplace that I was in. And what I couldn't figure out, my husband and some of my friends said, "Oh, people are just jealous of you." And I was like, that just didn't sit right with me. But I
Mhm.
didn't think they were jealous of me. But I'm wondering if maybe they thought because I was suggesting ways to improve things or whatever that they took it as me criticizing them, right? And
Mhm.
instead of just asking what I was thinking about, or me maybe asking them more questions. I think I was just really naive, and I just thought, well, they're gonna love this, and then
Yeah.
they turn around and stab me in the back. I was
Yeah.
like, I don't get this. Um, so thinking about that in your life and where you've been, where have you seen women being difficult with you, or what we used to say is jealous, but really it's trying to keep that level playing field with you.
Yeah. I remember all the executive positions that I've had, probably except for this last one, I didn't have too many women that were in competition. But when I was in more of the corporate world, like banking and those kinds of areas, I really saw women wanting to attack rather than, be a part of a solution. And so if, I was in a very male dominated workplace, at one point, and seeing those women that just wanted to attack me because I was a strong woman with an opinion. I was one that came into a male dominated workplace and wasn't afraid to speak my opinion. But I'm kind of with you, is, this is something I've experienced my whole life too. And it wasn't until about 2015, I went through a really intense leadership coaching program with the business that I was working for. And I had this coach that basically said, well, because I always said, well, it's other people's problem. They're jealous, And he said, no, actually, it is your problem, and you need to figure out how to resolve it if people are seeing you that way. And so that's when I really learned about, that connection piece. And I would say, even before that, I was always those women that wanted to attack or wanted to not be my friend. I was there. They were always the person that I was going to reach out to and do my best. And I learned that just over time because, as a kid, it's, the girls were always jealous. I felt like they were mean to each other. I feel like girls are really mean to each other in high school, junior high. They seem to be really mean to each other. And so we build this societal norm and cultural norm in factors that contribute to what happens as we get older, right? And so if we could change that around and really build these healthier relationships and learn to communicate and connect with women rather than trying to see them as our competition. And I think even in entrepreneurship, I think women see themselves in competition more. If we're doing the same thing, like you and I do the same thing. But the thing that we have to realize is, one, there's plenty of people out there that need coaching. There's plenty of people that are going to relate to you versus relate to me. And things that I teach are going to be different than what you teach. And so we have to be okay with saying, hey, I know Shannon, and she's going to be a better coach for you than I am, because she works more directly with women, or directly with executive women, or whatever it may be. And then also celebrating our differences rather than seeing them as jealousy or threat, or that ability to, of not finding, empathy for each other in things, and helping people professionally. If somebody were to reach out to me, say I was some huge success on Instagram, or like I look at Tamsin Fidel, I follow her on most social media and I like her a lot. If I was her and someone reached out to me and it was a woman that was like, hey, I'm trying to get into what you're doing, I really want to be, I would probably engage with them and have a conversation with them. Right. That would just be my nature. Where I think some women would be intimidated by that, and they'd be like, well, I
have had that happen. Oh my gosh. I reached out to a coach in Seattle because my daughter was moving over to Seattle. So I thought, I think I will see if I can form some relationships with other coaches. So when I'm in the Seattle area, I could, have to talk to and collaborate with.
Yeah.
And I think it was like 3 or 4 of them that I reached out to, and they were not nice at all. They would only wanted to talk to me if I was going to hire them as my coach. Not because, maybe that we had something in common and that we could support one another or bounce ideas off one another.
Yeah.
I'm really saddened by that. But, I've been coaching women for about 18 years now, and it's actually really common, unfortunately. The photographers that I've coached, they wouldn't want any other photographer to know the site that they would go, their secret place where they love to take their clients, because they didn't want any other photographer to take pictures there, right? And I'm like, what I learned was that every photographer has their own artistic eye, right? So just like anything, 2 people can take the same photograph and it isn't going to look the same. There's going to be differences, right? Especially if you're a professional and you have your own style of doing things. Realtors, that's another one. Women in realty really don't want to share sometimes. And I would ask them, I'm like, well, it takes 2 realtors. Usually there's one on either side of the transaction. Why wouldn't you want the person that on the other side of the transaction to be as good at her job as you are at yours, so that the transaction goes smoothly all the way through?
Right. Yeah.
sometimes I have to laugh at the competition that women
We
have.
create it.
Yes, and we're creating it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And especially with coaches, yeah. I mean, I've reached out to coaches even in our local area over the years, and most of them never reach back. And it's like, well,
Same.
I'm not trying to steal your clients. Maybe I could even refer clients to you if I get to know you, because like I only coach a few people at a time. And the things that I do are very, very specialized to us, to a group of people. So if there's
Yeah.
things that you do that I can, send them to you, I would be more than happy to, if I could trust that you are going to be a good coach for them.
Because our ultimate goal is for everybody to shine, not
Right.
just you or I. It's for everybody to shine. And that's where it's like, yeah, I I think that, one of the things that when I was doing a little research on this today is the terminology that came up, if we really look at it, is it was called internalized misogyny,
Mm-hmm.
which I thought was quite a drastic definition of it. But why are we creating that? And that is where I think we have to look internally, and whether it be that if we know that we're creating it, create some self-awareness individually around that. But society is making us that way, and we can break that cycle. Only we can break the cycle.
Only we can, exactly. We can, and so that was one of the things that on some of the tips I was looking at was that social capital, and that if we reach out and support another woman, then she's more likely to mirror that back to us. So
Yeah.
it does start with us, right? That we need to reach out and be there for another woman and show her, like, really the definition of abundance means that we have enough, right?
Yeah.
Abundance is that we have enough of everything. It isn't that we have to have stacks of everything, right? That's the opposite of abundance, actually. I mean, that's just chaos and overwhelm and greed. But when we have enough and we feel good about what we're doing, then we can share, right? And we can help one another. And
Well,
so,
it's networking, right? And so when you were reaching out with other coaches and you're trying to network with people to build a network, it's not just about, you're not trying to take their business, you're building a network, you're building relationships, and that's what your goal was. And here, that's not what you were able to achieve because of the reaction or the non-reaction that you got from people, because it's more fearful of someone taking your business rather than, hey, we could do this together, or we could create some stuff together, or maybe I can refer some people to you. That's why I want to know who you are, not because I'm trying to take your business. Or either the other thing that would be helpful in all of it is that maybe you struggle at some point getting clients. Maybe at some point I'm struggling getting clients. It's like, how are you networking? How are you getting clients? What are some of the things that you're doing? Or even somebody that's trying to start a business, because it's not easy always to start. And so the only way we do that is through networking.
right. Well, like an example for me this week is there's a young gal that I have known for 5 or 6 years in my church community. And I've reached out a couple times to her because she's seemed to kind of be a little bit lost sometimes. She has kids and she's a single parent and just had a lot going on. And so, but I hadn't really talked to her in the last couple of years. She kind of had disappeared. And then I saw her recently and was just so happy to see her. I was like, oh, I'm so happy you're here. How are you? I saw your daughter's getting ready to graduate, all these different little things that I had noticed about her from following, just seeing her social media pop up now and then. And so she reached out to me the other day and she said, I am in a really good place right now, and I could use some help figuring out my next direction. And you're the first person I thought.
Aww,
So we're meeting this week, right?
that's awesome.
to
Yeah.
figure that out. And it's because I invested in her, regardless of whether she could do anything for me, regardless of whether she would ever be a client. And she still might not be a client. We might just sit down and have a cup of coffee, and I'm going to listen to her and maybe be able to give her some ideas for direction. I have no idea. But to me, the gift of being able to just sit down with someone and do some brainstorming and help them to figure out a direction to go in is just,
Mhm.
it's one of the things I love to do. And it's one of my strengths. So being able to
Yeah.
do that with somebody else when they're lost in the chaos of their own mind, it's so important. And so when I was looking at these things, and you and I were talking before we went on air, um, that women who lift other women up do a few things really well. And one of them, you talked about communication, is that women who listen to each other, and most people, unfortunately, in today's world, listen just long enough to get the information that they want, and then they tune
Unless
out.
it's your husband.
Yeah. Or they're only hearing enough, listening enough, so that they're forming their response, right? Which
Yeah.
is the biggest communication problem that we have, I think, and why people are so divisive is because we just want to defend whatever our position is or whatever
Yeah.
we think it is against what we think the other person's position is. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, we really need to just listen, right?
Mhm.
Truly listen authentically, ask some caring questions, give some compliments, asking them what they've tried to do already. I can't tell you how many times I put something out there and wanted to have, oh, can you give me some advice on whatever, or I need help with such and such. And people give me the most basic of advice. They don't even bother to ask me what have you tried this or have you tried that. It's just like bam, bam, bam. Everybody goes into solution mode rather than trying to dig a little deeper and find out what the root of the problem is. And I mean, I guess that's why we're trained as coaches, right? It's actually
I know. Sometimes when I had a friend not too long ago, she said she was talking to me about this employee that she had, and I said, "You need to ask her why she feels that way." And she's like, "What?" And she's like a super smart, intelligent woman. I'm like, "You need to ask her to figure out where that's coming from and why she feels that way when you're telling her that she's doing something wrong. She gets defensive. Ask her to internalize that and figure out why that's happening." And
right.
I'm like, that's a coaching mechanism. Like you have to ask, you have to get to the bottom of why something is happening. So yeah. So I'm
Right.
right there with you.
I know I always tell my clients to get on the same side of the problem. So
Yeah.
instead of being a me versus you kind of conflict, it's like, okay, you're the leader, you're bringing along person alongside you, and it's like, okay, so we're going to put this out on the desk and say, this is the scenario, this is the situation. So what's going on with this. So then
Yeah.
it becomes more of a collaboration and a solution kind of thing
Yeah.
rather than a conflict, because none of us like conflict. I think leaders, at least the leaders I've worked with, a lot of times get defensive because they really don't want to have to critique
Well,
someone.
and they don't know how, right? And so they're automatically like, and I think that as women, that's what we do sometimes too, is that when we feel like somebody's coming into our territory, instead of embracing that and saying, how can I help you? We get defensive
Right.
and our negative beliefs and our negative thoughts and all of that jump in and think, there's not enough to go around and there's plenty to go around, and so I think we get into that negative or that defensive mindset because we're not, as you're saying, listening to understand and to help rather than we're listening to defend and maybe even say why you can't do that so that you don't succeed over me,
Right.
kind of
Exactly.
a thing.
And then another thing that I have found for myself to be really helpful, a couple girlfriends and I are really good about just sending each other a quick little text, with a funny
Mhm.
little gif or something. How's your day? What's going on with you? In Messenger, my friend and I send each other the most ridiculous jokes and things like that. But even going in and taking a moment as you're scrolling through social media, instead of just scrolling and reading it, or maybe just hitting the like button, is going in and making an actual comment, right?
Yeah.
Because that's where our dopamine, we're on the social media because we want to see, oh, who liked it? How many comments do we get? Whatever. And it's like, if we could just take a moment, I love it when I put something out on social media and people are like, oh, that's so cool. Or, that's a really good thing to made me think about something, so it really encourages me. It doesn't take anybody any time to actually do that, but boy, the reward on the other end is so good.
Yeah, definitely. And I will go into social media and people that I don't know. And if I will usually skim through, posts and see what some of the comments are. If they're longer comments, and sometimes I'll read them. And especially if they're women that are maybe not feeling encouraged, or it's a negative comment, or they see something or even sometimes when they're like, yes, I needed to hear this today, I'm motivated again. Then I'll send a message back to them and just say, keep on going, even though I don't know the person. And I try to do it more for, women than I do for men, because I don't think that we do it enough for each other. And then the other thing is that, other coaches, other women on social media, I try to follow a lot of them. One, just to see what they're doing, two, to get ideas. But the biggest reason why I will follow and like all of their posts is because I'm trying to encourage their business as well, right? We all like the likes, we all like the comments, and we all like the follows. And so that's my contribution to people that I don't know. It's like, I feel like if I can do that for people, and if we all did that more for each other, like I commented earlier that, I've reached out to a couple of people that I follow because I like what they say, but then, you reach out to them or you comment and they don't ever comment back, and they don't ever. And I feel like I would rather not have a social media following that big if I can't help and follow people, and help and respond to their comments, because that's what I'm there for. I'm not there to just, to create something and drop it and never go back. I want to engage with my audience as well. And so, if we could do that as women and engage, especially with other women. I mean, sometimes you get men that are posting on there and they don't necessarily understand the content because their mindset is different. But if we can encourage each other through business that way, I think then we all win.
Right. Well, they were saying that there are now more women who graduate with their college degrees than men over year.
And I think that's because women feel like they have to get it in order to be where men are in the workplace. Well, that's my perspective.
Looking at it though, it's like, okay, so more women are getting educated, more women are starting businesses, more women are doing really great things. And yet there's still a lot of people at the top that there are very few women that are there. And I think we blame men, but really we need to take responsibility for ourselves.
Yes.
To be able to raise each other up, right?
Yes.
And if sometimes, men can really laugh at women, right? When they see women being all gritchy at each other and being all tribal and tearing each other apart, that doesn't really set a good picture of us, right? So
yeah,
then men don't always know how to deal with that, right? So it's like,
well, and I will tell you, most of the men that I get when I was doing HR consulting, when I was doing some strategic stuff for some businesses, is that they will always say, well, you know how women are. And I'm like, what do you mean by that? And a lot of it was, they're just catty with each other. And to me, that doesn't make sense, because I've always had a team of women that have always gotten along well. We've always, we've eaten lunch together, and we do things together outside of work. So even as a executive, my team was always cohesive, even though most of the time it was always women. I have seen studies that show that if they're interviewing if there's an interview team, and maybe there's only one or two women on the interview team, and maybe there's 3 men on the interview team. If the men select a man, which 9 times out of 10 they'll select a man, the women will tend to go with the men because they're afraid to speak up with the men. So there's studies out there that show that women don't even lift women up as far as trying to get them jobs into positions where women could work together. And that's partly because women do have this cattiness sometimes in the workplace. I'm hoping that's changing with the newer generations, but they have to learn that they create the issues themselves most of the time.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's why, do I believe still that there's a gender gap as far as wages? Yes. And I think that is sometimes maybe not something that's being caused, but I would say everything else causes that. And I think that if there was more connection between women and they would challenge their own negative beliefs and kind of either get coaching, create some self-awareness or whatever it is, or recognize this sexism or that they're creating in their mind between their own sex, that we would start to narrow and close the gender gap.
Right. Right. No, I think so. And, and we each have our own unique zone of genius too, and our own unique way of showing up. So instead of being threatened by a new woman who comes into our territory, right? It would really behoove us to find out more about them, right?
Mhm.
Find out what gifts and assets they have that they can contribute to our tribe, rather than immediately saying, "Oh, new person, bad." I mean,
Mhm.
that's our basic primal brain, right? That is
Yeah,
keeping us protected, and our brain constantly is always looking for what's wrong and isn't looking for what's right. So that's very much an intention. But one thing too, I think on the last thing on this note, as we're getting ready to wrap up, is that women don't celebrate themselves. Men are really good about, having the accolades, and I did this and I did that, and feeling really good. But what I know is that women have a really hard time celebrating themselves and the things that we do well. And so
mhm.
if we're not celebrating ourselves, how are we going to celebrate somebody else? Right.
Yeah,
So I know when I'm working with clients, one of the first things that I have them do is they have to give their wins for the week, and really helping them to recognize small wins, big wins, being able to, in all humility, still
yeah,
celebrate the things that
yeah,
are in their life, right? The things
yeah.
that they're good at. And then it's a lot easier to celebrate other people when you're feeling good about yourself and when you have good self.
Right. Yeah, and I think, that goes right into what the coaching aspect is that if, women want to overcome this and they're struggling with that, is there's a lot of ways that coaching can really help them to overcome this. And that is, whether it be just figuring out what the root cause is of why a woman is feeling so jealous or envious or overwhelmed by other women in the workplace, and then also creating a self-awareness, and then helping us identify some new perspectives around how those bonds and those relationships would work better, and then how do we practice those different behaviors. And that's where coaching can really help women figure those things out, is and how to go in that direction is by connecting and putting a kind of a game plan into place of how am I going to be the woman that makes a difference, and not doesn't get caught up in making other women feel the way that I'm feeling.
Right. Right.
And so I think that that's really important. But so I think some good points today is, that mindfulness around communication with women and how do we interact, listening to what they want, trying to close the gender gap by just through communication, possibly getting some coaching around this to understand better. And then, back to what we talk about is lifting other women up and allowing them to shine. And when we are being critical of other women, is catching ourselves and trying to put that in a different light and seeing it a little bit different than what we automatically tend to see it as, like an intimidation or fear factor of a woman taking over, experiencing something better than someone else. We
Right.
just have different experiences. It's not always better, it's different.
Exactly. And it's so important to recognize when, if we start to feel that way, that we start having a negative response to somebody, or a jealous kind of envious response to somebody. That's a good time to check ourselves. It's because it's
Mhm.
like, where am I lacking? Where do I feel lack in this moment?
Right.
I can't allow that person. I can't be happy for that person, or I can't allow that person uh, to take up space in my mind in a positive way, rather, and because that's a scarcity factor in me.
Mhm.
That's like, where do I not feel good enough? And
Yeah.
that's something that we would really need to address. And as in coaching, I think that's one of the favorite things that we get to do, is really shifting those mindsets and shifting those belief patterns when we can recognize them and say, okay, this is me, holistically, authentically me, and this is how I feel, and this are my strengths, and where I shine. And then out of that, I can look at somebody else and ask them questions and engage with them to figure out where they shine. And then then we shine brighter when we're both shining together,
right?
And try to dim their light or dim our own light. Because I do that too. Sometimes I'll dim my own light. If I walk into a group and I really want to belong, and I don't want to stand out because while I'm getting to know them, so I'll dim my own light until I can figure out where I fit in, and then shine. And that's pretty sad.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't want to do that if they were entering my friendship circle, right? I would want to see the best of them right away. So
yeah,
hopefully today
that'd be a good future topic, is
that
how
would
we
be
dim
a
our
good
own light.
Yeah. Oh, that would be a good one. We should talk about that in a couple of weeks, because Monday I will not be available because I will be traveling in Seattle.
Okay.
So it'll be 2 weeks unless we want to pick a different day. Although, that whole week I'm going to be gone. So
we'll just skip next week, and 2 weeks we'll talk about dimming our own light.
Yeah. All right. And if anybody is watching the replay, feel free to comment. Reanette and I will see your comments, and we'd be happy to get back to you and answer any other questions or comments and help you shine your light. All right, everybody.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.